what a treat it is for us to have a young man who grew up here in San Angelo, and we claim you, who is now working in the music scene in Manhattan, New York. And what a treat to have David Noland here with us today, who went through some of our San Angelo schools.
Correct.
And your parents are here, and thank you so much for giving time for us, for our audience to get to catch up on what you've been doing since you left us and got more training and are now famous. All right, talk to us, David, about where you went to school and your parents, and let our community know a little bit about your past.
Absolutely. I started playing the saxophone when I was 12 years old. And I started just like, I'd say 98% of the people that were involved with the band program here in San Angelo. I went to Glenn Junior High, and Cindy Costello, who was a very, 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 very huge inspiration and a mentor to me, put the saxophone in my hands, and it all started there for me. I had a lot of, just to clarify, I did have a lot of music in my family. My father was a big lover of jazz.
Jim
Noland. And he was always playing Count Basie records and the records of Stan Getz, who's a very famous saxophone player. My grandfather was also a musician. He was a drummer for Les Brown, who was a very famous big band leader from the World War II era, Glenn Miller style dance big band stuff. So I did, along with the San Angelo school system, I did have a lot of encouragement and a lot of music at home. Through the San Angelo school system, there was a lot of encouragement there. I got to participate in the UIL competitions, and I mean, looking back upon my life, those were extremely, extremely important and crucial to me, because what we had a chance to do was audition against, I hesitate to say again, with the other schools and the other students from like Abilene Cooper, Lubbock, Wichita Falls, and it was just a really, really, amazing, excellent opportunity for me as a growing musician coming up in the school system here. And I encourage that, and I highlight that part of my life because I'm involved with a lot of school systems throughout New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and they actually surprisingly don't have a system set up like that. And I feel like that was a very encouraging point in my life,
Did you know you wanted to do saxophone, or did Ms. Costello, who is still with our system and magnificent band director out at Lakeview, did she feel that would be a good fit for you?
Yeah. I mean, it was, there kind of came a point in time in my life while I was at this San Angelo, when I was at Central, and we all go through it when we're juniors in high school, and everybody's sitting there, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? What are you going to make of yourself? What's happening? And I had these ideas swirling around in my head, like, I guess I'm kind of good at math. I like reading books. And finally Homer Stewart, who I'm not sure if you remember. Okay, he was a very important figure in my life, and he was the assistant band director at Central for a number of years, along with Mr. Hanley, who was a wonderful, wonderful teacher as well. All he said to me is like, Dave, why would you do anything other than music? And that really kind of put just a period at the end of that. That question that I had in my head, what to do, and it just kind of solidified where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, and
So when you left high school, tell us where you went.
Okay, well, after leaving high school, I was pretty passionate about doing it, and I just looking back, I just had this feeling of just having a willingness to just kind of do whatever it took to get better. Well, so I went, the big music school is University of North Texas for us native Texans. That's where a lot of the You know, they have
It's
the one.
one of the good ones,
Yes.
David.
Yes, one of the good ones. Not to knock any of the other ones, but you know, as far as jazz programs, I wanted to be a jazz saxophone player. You know, you know, just to reiterate, I was surrounded by, you know, Count Basie, Stan Getz, John Coltrane. Growing up, these records that I had were very big influences on me, at a very young age, you know, and might I add, when I was at Glenn Junior High in San Angelo Central, they had a jazz band, and it was very important to me to become involved in that stuff.
And they still do, and they're very good.
Oh,
You
yeah.
you would be proud.
I'm sure I would be. And so anyways, yeah, I went to University of North Texas for a couple of years. And it was just diving into the deep end for me. I mean, North Texas, the fascinating thing about it is it's just this tremendously huge pool of musicians, you know, and then there's little old me with my saxophone, and I show up, you know, and, you know, next thing you know, you're just playing with people just from all throughout the world, you know, and throughout the United States. And so I spent 2 solid years at North Texas, and it was a very, very good learning experience for me in terms of just really understanding the level of musicianship and the level of musicianship that it takes to, I guess, quote unquote, make it as a professional musician. So while I was at North Texas, I'm sure a lot of people wonder, you know, well, okay, so what took you to New York? Why New York? Why didn't you just stay in Dallas? I mean, because frankly, Dallas and Austin and Houston all have fantastic music scenes. You know, there's a lot of there is a lot of there's a lot of musicians there. There's a lot of music happening. New York for me always held this, I'd say, like a mystical dream. Like I always wanted to, you know, just go experience the big city, you know. And so while I was at North Texas, through a friend of mine, I auditioned for a jazz program, a pretty prestigious jazz program, school at William Patterson University in Wayne, New Jersey, and I got accepted, and I got to be a part of this pretty elite jazz program at William Patterson, which was a pretty big turning point in my life. I moved there, and I was in the New York City area. I mean, just to clarify, in case you're not familiar with the geography of New York, New Jersey is just, you know, just right across the Hudson River. So it's very easy for us as college students to be going in and out of New York City to see music, to play. I mean, we were going in there playing jam sessions and meeting all the other musicians that were in their early 20s, you know, there to make music. So it was a very fantastic opportunity. Upon graduating from William Patterson University, I stayed in the area. We called New York, New Jersey, Connecticut the tri-state area. So I ended up staying in New Jersey, which is just about 10 miles west of the Lincoln Tunnel, in this town called Rutherford, New Jersey. Whereas if you ever watch a Giants game, they got the Giants Stadium there. I lived there for a little while. And actually my first job was working at a grocery store. I was a cashier. So, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, you know, this is fun, this is great, but this is not really taking me, you know, I didn't move all the way from San Angelo, Texas, just to like sack groceries. So I ended up, long story, I met a man named Ed Jaffe, who's become a very, you know, important teacher and mentor to me. He ran a program at New Jersey City University, and I did a master's degree there, and he was very involved with the Broadway music scene. In case you're wondering, or in case you don't know, every Broadway show has a live orchestra along with it. And something a lot of musicians strive to do in New York, well, something that's very difficult, as you can imagine, for anyone, regardless of their career choice, is how am I going to survive? You know, the rent is astronomical. The cost of living is very tough. It's very hard finding an apartment, you know, all this stuff. So I'm obviously sitting there working at this grocery store thinking, oh my God, how can I get out of this? Anyways, I met him. I studied with him. I ended up doing a master's degree at New Jersey City University. And from there, I ended up doing a number of tours. I ended up touring with Cheetah Rivera for a little while, and I ended up working my way into the Broadway scene. And in the meantime, I was still able to perform with my jazz groups within the jazz community there in New York as well. In 2006, I recorded my first album called Nomad, which is on the Jazz Excursions record label, which is it's a record label based out of Boulder, I believe, Boulder, Colorado. Ever since then, I'm what's considered a freelance musician, a freelance saxophonist in New York, and so I am now a member of the Broadway show Follies, which is a Stephen Sondheim show with Bernadette Peters. I'm a member of the orchestra there, and fortunately, they allowed me to take some time off to come down and hang out with San Angelo folk. And I'm a member of the faculty at Western Connecticut State University as well. So. And
is being on tour an exhausting way to live if it lasts over a long period of time, isn't it?
Yeah, touring. Yes, touring is very difficult. What's a little exhausting about it, and what can be a little bit of a trap with it, is that. You're touring, and it's very tough, and it's very hard, and it's difficult to maintain relationships, friends, and family, and I've seen I've seen a number of people end up on tour and they never get off. Before they know it, they're 60 years old, still traveling around with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, so. That being said, I mean, within the music business, you never say never. I'm never going to say I'm never going to go on tour again, or something like that. But it is something in my life that feels like a chapter closed, and I'm trying to move on,
But most instrumentalists end up doing it that it is their life's, it's their profession. End up doing that. And it is a part of. A very exhausting part of a person's life, so I hear. I've not been on tour, but I hear that it can really strain relationships, as you just alluded to. You are teaching and performing.
Yes.
And those hours are hard.
Yes, they're very hard.
Because the performing is twice a day on weekends and almost every night but one that the theaters are shut down. And then you teach during the day. Well,
that's correct. I mean, and also I do want to stress that so what I do in New York is still freelance, even though I am doing, the Sondheim show. For instance, last Monday I got to perform at the Village Vanguard, which is a famous jazz club in New York. I mean, you still get called. I've played with the New York Philharmonic. I mean, you're on call, and that's really truly the fantastic thing about New York. That's really, just to try to sum everything up, that's what really drew me there, and that's what is so fantastic about New York, is that you're offered these opportunities. For instance, the cell phone right now could ring, and I could go on tour with the Rolling Stones, and which it's like you have friends, these people, and you become involved in this scene where these things happen, and it's a really fantastic opportunity, and.
Is it to do all the things you're talking about, to continue that pace, is that a young person's world?
Yes, I would. It's something you have to get in on from the ground up. I mean, in other words, it's very difficult to maintain with a family. It's not the most conducive lifestyle for, having a wife and children. And so, yes, in answer to that question, it is, I would say, there's plenty of people that do it, but I mean, they've established themselves at a younger age.
What do you envision for yourself a decade from now?
Quite honestly, I really sincerely and genuinely love my life right now. And hopefully, God willing, things continue a decade from now. That being said, I want to do more. I would like to play a more active role in schools. I love teaching. I love seeing that initial spark with a student when the light goes off, or when you play something for them, and seeing that level of encouragement is really something priceless for me. And I'd say a decade from now, yes, I would like to become more involved with schools. I'd like to try to teach more, and I'd like to try to do more concerts such as this, even with St. Angelo, even with Daniel Makins. And
well, we both like him so much, and just my length of time in this city, he has enriched my world considerably, not only with his gifts, but his delightful demeanor, and he's been your friend a long time. Right now, your teaching is more with college-age kids?
Yes. Right now, all of my teaching is with college-age students.
Which, if you're taking lessons when you're in college, by and large, you've chosen that, and it's fairly serious. Do you have any opportunities yet to interact with, say, high school?
I did teach at a junior high school very briefly, but like I said, yes, it is something that I would like to do more. And in answer to your question, no, I have not had a lot of experience.
Do you have patience?
Yet to be found out. Yet to be determined.
Well, if you have a good sense of humor, which I think you do, you'll do fine.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, you just show a little interest, and kids are very hungry for people to show interest in them, even though their body language at first might not indicate that. You grew up in a home and a family that loved jazz. I happen to have had a father who was very much into jazz. I was a clarinetist, and we took many family trips to New Orleans to hear Pete Fountain and others. And I briefly called that a brainwashing, but it certainly was a positive part of my growing up, to the point I can't separate out parts of that. But you are now a professional, which is a whole different level. So few people make that. You can't buy that. You have to be good enough and pay the price to be recognized and have a network that includes you, that invites you to play in certain ways.
Right.
If we have young people listening who so much have enjoyed being a part of the music scene, what's important to know, the very few people who make it in your world, what's important to know as a young person if they're thinking, man, I think I want to do that?
Well, it's something that I find about, it's something for young kids that I think it's extremely crucial and extremely important, not only for kids, but I think for adults as well that are instructing kids, is, follow your dream, follow what you love, and don't necessarily, I understand as parents, as older adults that worry about the path of a child, worrying about the money, and financial concerns. But you really think about it, what is the point of life if you're not going to do what you really truly love to do? If you're going to go throughout life just being miserable, just trying to make payments, what is the point of making those payments? So you can just, continue down this monotonous road. So, for me, I hope this answers your question. I hope I'm not going on a diatribe here, but for me, as an instructor, as a teacher, regardless what a child chooses to do, just as long as he's following his or her dream, and as long as their heart and their passion is in it for the right reasons, because they truly love to do it. If you want to be a nurse, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, or if you want to be a sports figure, a musician, Now that being said, I think the important thing to clarify is that there are dues to pay. There is a price. You have to work very hard.
Long hours.
That's correct. Yeah, it doesn't
practicing.
matter. And the practicing doesn't stop for me, or for a musician, or that's why the passion and the it needs to be there. The desire to do this, because it's not like riding a bicycle. Like, oh, okay, I know how to do it. That's fine. Done. It's something that requires a lot of patience and a lot of diligence and a lot of time spent in a practice room, and that goes with anything. If you want to be good at anything in this life, it requires hours and hours and hours of true dedication to it.
Did you have a great work ethic when you were a young person?
I did. Yeah, I mean, you always, as a young, looking back on your life, you're always, you're always thinking, wow, I wish I would have done this more. I wish I would have done this. Yes, I mean, when I was at Central, I did get a lot of encouragement from the teachers to really try and work hard. And then when I got to North Texas, I saw kids my age, and I see the hours that's being spent on these instruments. And so, yes, I would say at an early age, I was, practicing in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 hours a day. So, and I still try to, even, and the thing about being a professional musician is that along with the work at night, that doesn't mean that I can just sleep till noon every day and, whatever, it's an everyday deal. It's like an athlete. Alex Rodriguez doesn't pick up a bat and hit home runs just because he's talented. He has to, you have to be dedicated. You have to work out. You have to, you have to exercise. You have to practice. And
Are you a composer like Daniel is?
Yes, I am. I would say yes, I am a composer like Daniel. The primary thing that distinguishes us is he's a lyricist. He writes lyrics for his songs, and I do not. And I guess being the specific genre of music, he's a little more, I guess, within the folk realm. And I apologize, Daniel. I don't mean to label your music. You got your own labels, and I would say I'm a little more with the jazz genre of composing.
Well, you've been a friend of Daniel's for a long time in this city. We love Daniel Makins. Tell us something that we might not know. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you about my relationship with Daniel. I sat next to Daniel. The first time I ever met Daniel was 7th grade math in Miss Laramore's class at Glenn Junior High. And I sat next to him, and that's when I met him. Turns out he was a drummer. I don't know if you guys actually knew that about Daniel. He's a very talented drummer. And
found something to drum on in math class.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And he was I remember, now this is going back 20 years now, but I remember him being a very advanced, drummer and a great musician and very inspired and very into it. And so yeah, I ended up playing with in various bands around San Angelo with Daniel. He was in the Glenn Junior High jazz band with me. And the thing that I remember and I really love about Daniel was I was listening to a lot of jazz when I was 13, 14 years old. And the only person I really had to play with was Daniel. So I would show up and, I'd be like, man, we'd listen to these records together and be like, well, it sounds like he's doing this right here and this. And so we'd just try to copy it. You know, we would just be like listening to his records, just try to play along. And, you know, and so anyways, as we grew older, he was playing in a lot of bands, and I ended up playing, you know, in a lot of bands with him. And also, I'd like to add that his family has been a tremendous support. His father, Daniel's father, Pat Makins, and my father are very close, very, very close friends, and have been for a number of years.
And share son stories?
Yeah, that I don't know about, but
I would bet so.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, and the thing that I would like to add about Daniel is none of this would be possible without him, you know, and his support.
Wow, what a compliment.
Yeah, you know, and I can't tell you how flattered I am to be coming back to do this, because as a kid here in San Angelo, I was around when the San Angelo Cactus Jazz Series first started, and it was very, very, very inspiring to me as a young kid to see these performers like Arturo Sandoval, Kenny Garrett, the Yellow Jackets, Terrence Blanchard come and perform. And I mean, I would just sit there just, you know, clamoring to look, you know, just like watching these guys. And so, you know, it's really a tremendous treat for me to come down here and do this. And it would not have been possible without Daniel being the initial spark to make that happen.
Well, that's a lovely tribute to him, and I believe you. Thank you so much for coming back to our city to share your talents. We are so proud of you and what you've accomplished, and hope you have many years to add your gifts to the Manhattan scene that so many of us as tourists now can go and enjoy.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Well, thank you very much.
Very much.
Okay.